Hi guys, today we're diving into probably one of the most pressing and emotionally charged issues in the UK right now, the grooming and rape gang scandal and the national inquiry debate where, according to the YouGov polls, 76% of Brits back calls for the inquiry into the grooming gangs. So what's really being done to hold people accountable? The government is hinting at a limited national inquiry, while Labour's Harriet Harman is pushing for a mini inquiry. What the difference is, I'm not sure. But are these just political buzzwords, or will they lead to meaningful change? Whistleblower Jane Senior, who's talking to a GB News reporter, isn't holding back. She's calling out complicity, demanding protections for whistleblowers, and insisting on survivor involvement. As we go through this video, we'll try and unpack the public frustration, survivor anger, and gaps in current investigations, asking the big questions: are politicians prioritising politics over people? Is there a cover-up going on? And will survivors finally get the justice they've been waiting for?
I think first of all it should have been a vote where MPs were not going to be whipped. They could, decide themselves. And I think there should be a national inquiry. I think it needs to be very different to what people are kind of shouting for. I don't think it needs to take 7 years. I don't think it needs to be an investigation, inquiry that, just gives the statistics after a year. I think it needs to go one step further, and it needs to look at those senior professionals that were complicit, ignored this, covered it up. Because we sit here and you look at not just Rotherham, but you look across the UK, I am not aware of any professional that's ever been held to account for this, either in any town or the 50 towns that you've identified at the GB News.
The J report from 2022, the ICSA inquiry, a lot of people saying we've already had a report, we don't need another one. What's been your response to that perspective?
I do believe that we need to get them 20 recommendations in place, and again, I think it needs to go one step further, and I think we need to get professionals in this area, we need to get victim survivors and parents around the table and kind of look at how we kind of bulk them out and expand on them and get them in place. Mandatory reporting, I think, is an excellent idea. I think in its current format it needs so much more work doing on it.
So those 20 recommendations, you think a new report specifically into these grooming gangs would bring in a whole new raft of recommendations?
No, I don't necessarily think it would. I think it may fetch some more, but I don't think it's going to completely change, because I think everybody would call for mandatory reporting. Everybody should be in a position, if they are aware or even suspect that a child's been abused, that they have a duty to report it. But it just needs to go that one step further, because when you do report it, and what they're saying is if the person that you report it to ignores it, it can become a criminal offence. Is there going to be protection, as in whistleblower protection as well, for those that are actually reporting it?
There are also, though, issues specific to grooming gangs that aren't included in the ICSA inquiry. There's no focus on deporting perpetrators. So there could be a recommendation from a new inquiry saying if someone's committing this sort of heinous abuse, they should be deported after they're convicted. Yeah,
and I think there would be other recommendations if it was just been focusing on grooming gangs, and also we need to get away from this language that, if we call them grooming gangs, we call them rape gangs, we call them paedophiles. It's not about it being far right, and it's not about it being racist. It's about calling it for what it is. These are children whose lives have been turned upside down, that have they've been raped, they've been tortured, they've been trafficked, and yet we're arguing over what terminology to use. Well, shall we just get round the table and actually talk about what we can do to stop this?
There's been a lot of conversation about Elon Musk, a lot of conversation about the politics, but not enough focus, I feel, on the survivors, their voices and their stories. Do you think they've been sidelined a bit by this debate?
Yes, I do, yeah. And I had a survivor message me yesterday, quite upset, quite angry. She's done no campaigning for a few years because she had a baby, and she just messaged me and she just said, enough is enough, I'm fed up of people speaking for me and what happened to me and what should come next. I want to get back campaigning again. I want to be speaking out. I want to be telling it from my point of view. She said, I'm just fed up of watching people on the TV making it all about them. And it's like, why are politicians ripping lumps out of each other over this? Why are they not all on the same page? I don't know. You know, sat round a table and saying, where do we go with this? How do we move it forward? What do we need to do? What do our constituents want? What do victims want? What do survivors want? What do parents want? And how can we move it forward?
A lot of survivors have shared their anger with GB News at the fact that it took 4 months almost for the government to respond to them in Oldham and rejecting that government-led inquiry. And it was also revealed that Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, hadn't spoken to any of the survivors from Oldham before she made that decision. She didn't understand the local issues that caused them to make that request. Do you think that's a sign that the government doesn't take survivors seriously enough when it comes to their demands, that they just reject them after a long delay?
I think it's a very poor decision. 4 months is a long time to wait for an answer, but I don't think anything, be it reviews, independent inquiries, should be done without listening to the voice of those that it affects. I do lots of reviews at charity that I work at, but I actually speak to the people that I'm doing the review on to get their voice in there, to get their opinion. Do they all agree? Of course they don't, but it doesn't mean we don't listen to what they've got to say. They've been silenced as children, they've been silenced long enough. Now it's their time to shine, have a voice and get some answers.
Jane, what would be your message to Sir Keir Starmer tonight on this issue of the grooming gangs inquiry?
Please listen to what your people, the people that voted you in, are saying. Listen to the people that are affected by this, but more importantly, allow your own politicians to decide themselves without being threatened with a whip.